Hi and welcome to History Legends. In this video we'll react to 20 war movies you have to watch before you die from a channel called WhatCulture. I'll tell you if the movies they ranked are worth it or not, and if not, I'll recommend you better movies you can watch. Spoiler, I eliminated half of them. Without further ado, let's go.
With that in mind, I'm Will for WhatCulture, and here are 20 war movies you must see before you die. Number 20, Zulu.
Fantastic movie. Zulu covers the Battle of Rorke's Drift between the British and the Zulus. And since it's real people, real costumes, you will truly get immersed in the real scale of this engagement.
Number 19, Platoon, 1986.
Platoon hits different, mainly due to the fact that director Oliver Stone is himself a Vietnam veteran. I looked him up a bit and I was shocked. Unlike most American men that were drafted into ground forces, Oliver Stone enlisted specifically in the infantry for combat duty. He even witnessed the massive Tet Offensive. And you'll see throughout this movie, you'll just feel this personal experience. Other than that, the battle scenes in the movie are intense, and we clearly see the problem related to the one-year rotations of infantrymen, which in the end always swapped experienced men with newbies.
Number 18, INGLORIOUS Bastards, 2009.
No, Inglourious Bastards is not a war movie. I would call it, at best, an action movie set in World War II. If you want to see Hitler die, I recommend you instead the German movie called Downfall, a true masterpiece. It takes place during the Battle of Berlin and overall the last days of the Third Reich. It feels so real and it will have a profound effect on you.
Number 17, The Thin Red Line, 1998.
Watch it. It's very long, there's a lot of useless fluff, but watch it. And honestly, the combat scenes in The Thin Red Line are among the best I have ever watched. Overall, it's a highly underrated movie, partly due to the fact that it suffered from the hype of Saving Private Ryan.
Number 16, The Great Escape.
Give it a watch just because of Steve McQueen. The film depicts a heavily fictionalized version of the escape of 76 Allied prisoners of war in early 1944. Of course, since it's an American movie, it focuses more on the American involvement. Although in reality, it was almost all British Commonwealth personnel that was involved. And the ending. The true ending is much more tragic than what's depicted in the movie. But I say watch it because it gives you an idea of what were the living conditions of Allied prisoners of war in German custody.
Number 15, Grave of the Fireflies.
I haven't watched it, but from what I've been told and from what I read about it, it's more a historical movie than a war movie. I'm not saying it's bad by any means, it's just not specifically a war movie. It just takes place during the war. Now, if you're looking for a war movie that's animated, I recommend Waltz with Bashir. It's really an extraordinary movie that takes place during the 1982 Israeli invasion of Lebanon.
14, Dunkirk.
On one end, I'm pretty happy they covered the early period of World War II that's usually completely neglected. But despite its $150 million budget, it completely fails in representing the true scale of the Dunkirk evacuation. Whether it's done on purpose or not, it feels like a very narrow vision of actual events. Instead, I recommend you the French 1964 movie called Weekend at Dunkirk. One of my favorite movies ever. You'll witness what the men of Dunkirk actually went through. Hundreds of vehicles abandoned, and thousands of British and French soldiers desperately waiting to be evacuated. Even the small 10-minute segments about Dunkirk in the movie The Atonement does a better job. Just look it up online, but you will feel the true chaos and desperation of these men waiting on the beaches.
13, 1917.
For the OG people that have been following me for a while, they know my deep love for 1917. And for the new people here, I'll simply summarize it as, it's not a war movie! It's a thriller taking place during World War I. End of story. Sure, from a cinematic standpoint, the soundtrack, it's a masterpiece. but from a historical perspective, it feels cartoonish at best. If you want to see a good World War I movie, I recommend you to start with the basics. All Quiet on the Western Front. And both the 1930s and 1970s versions are good.
Number 12, Ice Cold in Alex, 1958.
Another movie I haven't watched fully, skimmed through some scenes, but overall it doesn't look promising. And as replacement, let me think, since it's about the British during World War II, yeah, just watch A Bridge Too Far. Magnificent movie. First of all, because of Michael Caine.
Like cocaine.
But also because a lot of the men that fought at Arnhem and during Operation Market Garden were present as advisors. I remember one of them was some sort of commander at the bridge of Arnhem, and he refused to be portrayed as a badass because it wasn't how it really happened, and he wanted the movie to be as close as possible to reality.
Number 11, The Deer Hunter, 1978.
It seems The Deer Hunter covers much more the life after the war than the war itself. Again, doesn't mean it's a bad movie, but I don't think it should be in the ranking. If you want a real Vietnam War movie, the real deal, just watch Hamburger Hill. On Instagram, I was lucky enough to talk with a man that was an extra in that movie. And once again, he said how actual veterans of the Battle of Hamburger Hill were present to help direct the movie, by guiding the crew and the actors and explaining how it actually happened. And let me tell you, it shows in the movie.
Number 10, Come and See, 1985.
Put simply, it's the Soviet perspective on partisan warfare on the Eastern Front, with a strong emphasis on civilians. In my opinion, it's much more than a movie, and you fully get immersed into the story as if you were there. I don't know if I'm supposed to tell you this, but I think the movie is fully online on YouTube with English subtitles.
Number 9, The Bridge on the River Kwai, 1957.
So we've covered what happened to Allied prisoners of war in German custody. But now if you want to know what happened in Japanese prison camps, that's the movie for you. But keep in mind, it's a fictional story. It is loosely based on a historical location and the events of World War II, but it's fiction. In reality, the Japanese were much more brutal, and the British were forced to work at bayonet point.
Number 8, The Dirty Dozen, 1967.
I mean, it's an interesting movie to watch just because of its top-tier cast, but it has little to do with the historical World War II. Now, if I had to recommend another movie, since the leader of the group is Lee Marvin, a veteran who was wounded during the beach landing at Saipan, I would recommend you The Big Red One. He also plays in it, and although the movie lacks budget, it gives you a good idea as to what an American infantryman during World War II could have been through. The movie starts with the American landing in North Africa and ends at the end of the war in 1945 in Czechoslovakia.
Number 7, Army of Shadows, 1969.
Although we talk a lot about the French resistance, La Résistance, I think this is one of the only movies that solely focus on them. But I have to warn you, it's a pretty dark movie. A pretty unromantic view of the resistance.
Number 6, Das Boot, 1981.
Now do yourself a favor, stop everything and just watch this masterpiece. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that Das Boot is one of the first high-budget German war movies about World War II. It allowed the Germans to cover their own perspective during the war. It's incredibly intense and highly unpredictable until the end. And it's also the best movie about submarine crews ever made. But since it's a German movie, it's also very dark.
Number 5, Full Metal Jacket, 1987.
I just love Full Metal Jacket. Basically, the movie shows you how you can transform young civilian teenagers into killing machines within a couple weeks. But what's great about it, and different from any other Vietnam War movie, is that it's not set in the jungle but in an urban area. And this is part of Kubrick's genius. And I haven't even talked about the excellent soundtrack, but just watch it.
Number 4, Saving Private Ryan, 1997.
Saving Private Ryan. I like it because the budget matched the vision. Unlike many war movies, it's action-packed. There's no romantic fluff, and the visuals are great. And the storyline, although it has its flaws, make it into one of the best war movies ever made. Now, little spoiler, I'm working on a step-by-step breakdown of Saving Private Ryan.
Number 3, Paths of Glory, 1957.
Honestly, I was hesitant whether to eliminate it or not. But in the end, I said yes because Stanley Kubrick is an excellent movie director. The movie in itself is splendid. My problem is that Path of Glory was so great that it became extremely influential with movie directors. And every damn World War II movie about the French army became a copycat of Path of Glory. Same vision about the conflict, same shots, same attacks. But nobody ever dared to ask whether it's even historically accurate. That deserves a HistoryLegends reaction.
Number 2, Schindler's List, 1993.
Don't get me wrong, it's a great movie and according to many, one of the best movies ever made. However, it's a great historical movie, not a war movie per se. Now, if you don't mind black and white movies, I highly recommend you the 1962 movie The Longest Day. It's the best depiction of D-Day ever made, and you won't regret it.
Number 1, Apocalypse Now, 1979.
Apocalypse Now is a gem. The story is great, and it combines your typical Vietnam War movie with a personal journey into madness. The battle scenes are great. Do I even have to mention the ride of the Valkyries? And all the characters are special in their own way, from Lieutenant Colonel Kilgore to Kurtz. That's all I have for you today. Overall, it's kind of sad that WhatCulture just blurred any movie in this ranking when there's so many options available. So I did not expect them actually to have a good ranking. If you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. And let me know in the comment section which one of these movies you watched. And as always, if you want to help me create more content, consider supporting me on Patreon.